How's it going, everyone? My name is Danny, but you already knew that, and I want to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition again. I've been doing a replay of this game over the last couple months, and the combat system that I initially really disliked has started to grow on me a little bit, so I want to talk about it. But before I do, just a quick warning for anybody currently or wanting to play the game that there will be some story and gameplay spoilers, so if you don't want to see those, go ahead and come back when you're ready. The rest of you, stay. I'll kill you if you don't. Alright, now let's get into the basics. In Xenoblade Definitive Edition, which from here on out I'll just call XCDE because it's easier, you have a palette of arts that you can use strategically while your controlled character automatically attacks the monster near you, called, obviously, an auto attack. Arts typically have some special requirement for activation that, when met, makes them grant some bonus effect. An example of this is Shulk's Backslash, which does double damage if you hit the enemy in the back. You can tell when this bonus effect is going to go off when there's an exclamation point above the art cell. Most of your time in combat is going to be spent trying to get as many of these exclamation point procs as possible. Successfully doing so will build up the party meter, which we'll talk about in a second, and builds tension. Tension is a mechanic with a bunch of nuance, but it's boring to explain, so I'm going to abridge it. Tension is indicated by how excited the character portraits to the left of the screen are. Max tension will be when the characters are shouting and the backgrounds are on fire, and the lowest tension they'll be really sad. Having high tension gives you some insane bonuses like increased crit rate and hit rate, while low tension will make you miss all of your attacks and decrease your crit rate. Most important thing about tension is that having higher tension gives you a chance to increase the length of a chain attack, which we'll talk about later. To increase tension, make sure you hit all of the QuickTime events that pop up on your screen and just generally play the fight well by using all of your arts correctly. I'm almost done with the nerd shit, I promise, but we gotta talk about driver combos and chain attacks first. A driver combo is a combination of a break into a topple into a daze. Some arts can do one of those things, and you have to combo them in order, so you can't daze into break, for example. You can tell if an art is a driver combo by its color. Break arts are pink, topple arts are green, and daze arts are yellow. Using a driver combo is important because it can stop an enemy in their tracks and allow for some free damage. And finally, we have chain attacks. A chain attack is one of the strongest, if not the strongest way to damage enemies in this game. When your party meter is full, which is the thing in the top left, you can activate a chain attack from the art palette. Chain attacks freeze the game and allow you to freely select any of your arts to attack with. Each character in your party gets to go once. What makes them so strong is that if you chain the same color arts into each other, there's a ridiculous damage multiplier. At the end of the chain attack, there's a chance for a QuickTime event to show up, and if you complete it, you get to go for one more turn and extend the multiplier even further. The maximum damage multiplier is 700% extra damage, which, as you can imagine, is stupid. The chance for the chain attack to continue is based on friendship levels between the party members or your party's current tension and some skills. Alright, nerd shit over, it's time for a smooth transition into our next part. Damage in XCDE is separated into physical damage, which is increased by the strength stat, and ether or magic damage, which is increased by the ether stat. Strength teams are usually more focused on chain attacks, while ether teams focus on setting up super strong damage over time effects. What are those teams? Well, allow me to introduce you to them. There are 7 party members in XCDE, but unfortunately, one of them is not that useful. If you're at all familiar with Xenoblade Chronicles, you know where I'm going with this, but yes, I'm unfortunately talking about Sharla. Being the dedicated healer of the game, Sharla unfortunately falls into a middle ground where she isn't much help on either of the teams. Since the strength team is so focused on chain attacks, they all have a lot of red-colored arts that they can chain together. Sharla only has one, so she's basically killing the chain attack whenever it's time to use one. As for the Ether team, they already have enough healing, and she doesn't provide enough damage or anything else useful to consider putting her in. Since Sharla is kind of designed as a crutch, being the dedicated healer in a game where mostly everyone can heal themselves, it makes sense that she isn't very useful when we're talking about dealing damage. So although I do love some Sharla, she's gonna be sidelined for this video. XCDE suffers from the really annoying curse of teammate AI being really bad. Back in 2010 when Monolith Soft made this AI, I'm pretty sure they just tested to make sure all of the moves would work at some point, and then threw it into the game without testing anything else. Thankfully, most of the time, they get the job done, except for two characters, those being Shulk and Melia. Because they are very difficult to understand with Monado arts and Melia's elementals, the AI is just really bad at figuring out how to use those. Thankfully, those two happen to be the two carries of the Strength and Ether teams respectively, so you'll be controlling them most of the time. Shulk is a pretty easy to understand character since he has the least amount of arts, so I'll break down what he does pretty quickly. Both Slit Edge and Air Slash deal bonus damage from the side, so you want to start every fight by using those two. By that point, you've probably done enough damage to aggro the monster, so you want to use Shadow Eye to lose some aggro and boost your next art's damage. Once the monster leaves you alone, it's time to position behind it and use Backslash for a massive chunk of damage. Basically repeat this combo until the monster dies. While you're waiting for your arts to come off cooldown, take the opportunity to use a Monado art depending on the situation, like using Monado Purge to remove the enemy stat buffs or Speed to help your party members dodge an attack. He really is that simple. Melia, on the other hand, is not that simple, but she's still not too difficult. Melia's game plan is all about summoning different elementals with her arts. Each one, when summoned, will give Melia a passive effect while it's out on the field. You deal damage by sending these elementals out with her talent art. By the way, I forgot to mention, the talent art is the big gray one in the middle. Shulk's Monado is his talent art, for example. The three main elementals you're going to be focusing on are Summon Bolt, Summon Ice, and Summon Earth. Summon Bolt's damage is alright, but it's mainly used because its passive effect gives Melia a huge ether bonus, which will increase the number of damage for the rest of her elementals. Summon Ice is used because it inflicts the first of Melia's damage over time effects, Chill. Chill does an initial burst of damage, and then inflicts 60% of that damage again, happening twice over 2 seconds. Summon Earth is the second damage over time effect, Poison. Poison will tick for 100% of the initial damage dealt every 2 seconds over 30 seconds. So Summon Earth hits, and then it will do that damage again 15 times. Lastly, Summon Copy just summons the last elemental that Melia used, which is really useful for doubling up on some strong elementals. With all of this in mind, Melia's game plan becomes really simple. You use Summon Bolt and then Summon Copy to boost your Ether as much as possible. Then do Summon Ice and discharge it, followed by Summon Earth and discharge it. From there, you can discharge both of the Summon Bolts as well. Repeat that until the enemy is dead. Oh yeah, also remember at the beginning of the video when I said that like the Strength team was good with chain attacks and the Ether team kinda like wasn't? So that was a giant fucking lie. Because Melia's damage over times all deal what I like to call recursive damage, and the ticks of damage are based around how much damage the initial hit does, if you get the chain attack multiplier off of Melia's discharge, you end up getting poison ticks every 2 seconds for around like 20,000 damage, which at that point the enemy can't do anything about it. Both of these carries are incredibly fun to play, and both offer a very different gameplay experience. However, when I was first playing through XCDE, I was really frustrated with the combat system. I was using Shulk, but I just couldn't find myself able to get aggro off of me because of the amounts of damage I was doing. No tank could keep up with my damage output, so I just kept dying. I wasn't sure why this was the case for a really long time, until about 2 weeks ago. I realized why that kept happening. I wasn't using Reyn. It's really funny that I called that last section the carries, since Reyn does more damage than both of them. In fact, Reyn is far and away the best character in XCDE. His damage output is absolutely ridiculous, and is a staple of almost every party in the game if you like dealing damage. Hell, you can even control Reyn if you'd like, and leave Shulk and Melia to the wayside. A huge reason of why Reyn is so strong is for this one ability, Berserker. For 15 seconds, Reyn's defense is lowered in order to increase his attack damage. In theory, this doesn't sound too overpowered, it's an attack for defense trade-off, so while he gets bigger damage, he's easier to kill, right? Well, that would be how it works in a balanced game, except let's check the numbers on it. At max rank, Berserker buffs Reyn's attack by 240%. Yes, that's right, 240%. This one ability gives him 2.5 times more attack damage. So with that crazy number for his attack damage, the defense has to go pretty low, right? No. His defense decreases by a grand total of, drumroll please, 25%. Reyn's defenses, which are already very high since he's designed as a tank, are cut by 25%. Okay, so Reyn can increase his attack by insane amounts, but it shouldn't matter that much realistically, since he's not doing much damage with his arts anyway, right? I mean, he's a tank, shouldn't his arts be weaker than someone like Shulk? Reyn's Sword Drive is the strongest art in the game. Yeah, because why not? He needed it. And just in case you were wondering, yes, he also has 3 area of effect arts, so if you're fighting multiple enemies, you can hit them all at the same time. His talent art also draws aggro. He also has an art that multiplies the damage of the next art he uses by 4.8 times. Also, he has 5 red arts, which are the easiest to chain together in a chain attack. Sword Drive is a red art, so he can multiply the damage of that move by 700% in a chain attack. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention before that Berserker also makes all of his auto attacks do area of effect damage, so he's hitting everyone all the time. Reyn's also able to topple and daze enemies, with 2 of the fastest arts in the game for doing so. He's seriously unmatched in everything. His only weakness is long art cooldowns, but the cooldowns can be as long as they want, since the enemy will probably already be dead by the time you use them all. With Reyn, you don't have to worry about gaining too much aggro on Shulk or Melia, since he'll just do more damage than you anyway. You don't have to worry about large swarms of enemies, because he's got those taken care of too. Reyn is everything. Reyn is the best. They really should just rename the game to Reyn Chronicles, since he's all that matters. There's no way to escape Reyn. The only place you can get away from Reyn is Future Connected, since he's not a- oh. Nene has his whole moveset. It's always Reyn time. Accept it. Okay. I think you guys got it by now. Let's do the rest of the characters. I'll be honest, I got no clever name for these characters. So far, our strength team is Shulk and Reyn, controlling Shulk, and our ether team is Melia and Reyn, controlling Melia, and Sharla's on the bench. Each team is 3 people big, so the next characters can be slotted into there depending on whichever you want more. Let's start with Dunban, who's pretty easy to explain. Dunban fills the evasion tank archetype, where he builds aggro on enemies, and instead of soaking up damage with large defenses and health totals, he soaks up damage by dodging all of the attacks. He's also really fun to play if you want to control someone else for a change. Since Reyn is going to be the one taking up all the aggro with his insane damage numbers, Dunban is useful for having just generally good damage and being able to apply bleed. He's also able to break and topple if you need him to. Dunban's standout ability is his talent art, Blossom Dance. This ability, provided you can hit all of the quicktime events, does a massive amount of damage and is really useful for chain attacks. Dunban's best team is going to be on the strength team, since he does mostly physical damage, has a lot of red arts for chain attacks, and has an art that buffs the strength of all allies, and can use Blossom Dance for insane chain attack damage. Ricky, on the other hand, will be filling the vacant slot for the ether team. Ricky's basically a bag of tricks character. His arts all do a bunch of different, seemingly random things. Most importantly, he can apply a bunch of status effects like bleed and poison to the enemy, and has a party-wide heal that heals based on the amount of status effects applied to the enemy. That was a mouthful, but basically, he puts a bunch of shit on the enemy and then heals the party to full because of it. Lastly, he's got an art that fills the party gauge a little bit, which is a nice cherry on top. Ricky slotted into the ether team since his status effect heal synergizes well with Melia, since she's also applying status effects. Okay. For everyone who's watched this far, thanks so much, I love you. However, I will remind you again that there are story spoilers in this video, and the next character is actually a huge one. So if you don't care, keep watching, and if you do care, feel free to click the timestamp to skip it, or just completely leave the video. Alright, you have been warned. Let's get into it. Our last character of the day is, of course, Fiora. Fiora is a really interesting character, because she's a robot, and she can go on either team. Her strength build, which I would argue is better than her ether build, is focused on auto-attacking really fast. She has plenty of red arts for chain attacks, and her strongest physical talent art does a lot of damage. On the other robotic hand, her ether build is pretty funny. Despite, in my opinion, being weaker than her physical build, this build revolves around one art, Final Cross. Well, also her talent art does ether damage too, but that's not important right now. Final Cross is a move that Fiora has to be maxed out on tension to use. However, once she's able to use it, it does insane amounts of damage, and if the last hit connects, it will force topple the enemy you use it on, no matter what. This move, unfortunately, has a 100-second cooldown, so you only really want to use it in chain attacks, which, again, doesn't really synergize well with the ether team. However, if you want to do it, go ahead. In short, you can slot in the Build-A-Bitch for either Dunban or Ricky, depending on which team you want to use her with. Alright, now that we've gone through all the characters, it's time to announce the final teams. Representing the physical team, we have Shulk, being player-controlled. Dunban for backup damage. and Reyn for tanking and unlimited power. And in the other corner representing the Ether team is Melia, being player controlled, Ricky for status effects and heals, and Reyn, again, for tanking and unlimited power. And representing our bench this time around we have Fiora, until she's subbed in, and Sharla, forever doomed to do no damage. And well, that's it. There wasn't really a point to this video, I just really want to talk about Xenoblade combat, and that's mostly the reason I make videos anyway. If you're playing through XCDE right now and struggling with the combat, I hope this helped a little. And I didn't even go over any of the nerd shit like skills and armor sets and gems, but to be honest, this video is getting a little long and there are plenty of other videos that have already done that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by dropping a like on it, and if you're interested in more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe. With that said, I'll see you all in the next one, whatever random topic that may be. Bye-bye!